So I'm here with Greg DeWalt, and he's the education director for the Pennsylvania RV and Camping Association. Am I right?
Yes.
Good, good. How long have you been there?
Came on board with PRVCA in August of this year, 2020. I'm sorry.
That's cool. How do you like it?
It's great. I've been a member of PRVCA when I was a dealer, and throughout all the years, just been around this group for a very long time. Great group of dealers. The staff is wonderful, and it was a good fit for me. I worked with them pretty closely during the years when we had the RVTIs that were at Northampton Community College and other places. So it just seemed like a natural fit.
So you were at a dealership for quite some time, weren't you?
Yes, yes.
You have your own dealership? Or
yes. Well, my dad started in 1966, and I grew up working on RVs and installing hitches when I was a kid, and took some years off for the military, and then came back and went right back into the dealership, and just gravitated to the service department. So that's where I ended up.
Where was your dealership? Was it in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Easton, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty good association with PRVCA then. Good
Yes.
reason for it. You worked at Forest River for a while too, didn't you?
Spent about a year with them. We were a Coachman dealer when I was a dealer, so I know all those guys at the Coachman area. So
Right.
they asked me to try and establish a territory for some products, and went there for about a year just to.
Yeah, so you also mentioned you were in the military. You went to West Point too, didn't you?
Yes, yes.
And what did you take there? It was like engineering and management?
Engineering and engineering management is what I studied. Then I spent 5 years in the military, in the Army, playing with Pershing missiles and nuclear weapons.
Oh, that comes in handy every day, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
In the RV business, sometimes you'd like to use a nuke. So did the training you had, does it kind of factor into what you're doing with fixed ops training with PRVCA now? I mean, your background help you with that?
Oh, absolutely. Just the fact that, you know, as an Army officer, we were actually talking about this a little while ago with some of the staff, that you need to have a real good detail orientation when you're in a planning process, and process oriented when you're in the military. I mean, everything has a plan to it, you know. So if you just all the way down to the operations order has a certain way you write it and describe it, and it's detail oriented, and make sure that you pick up all little pieces along the way. Well, that applies really closely with fixed operations in terms of how do you plan out your technician's time? How do you plan out your technician's day? How do you plan out taking care of your customers? How do you plan for the parts? And so there's a process to develop all that, and a process to make all that work, and all come together at the end. So you create the objective and work it backwards and build the processes. So all that training in the military really was a benefit.
Yeah, and it's great that you're able to pass that along and, you know, kind of convert it to the RV business and help the people in the RV business. I see you're, you know, you're doing this warranty administrator online. Does it start this week?
It starts next week, Monday.
Okay. So I understand you used our Mike Molino RV Learning Center curriculum to develop it.
I used the DACM because years and years ago, I was in on the RVTI, the RVST, the RV Service Training Council.
Right, right.
And so a lot of those DACMs that are out there were initially developed by the RV Service Training Council. That was back in the 90s and early 2000s. So I sat in on a lot of that development back in those days. And the DACM is a really good roadmap for the activities, and basically creates the objective for what the personnel in those positions need to be able to accomplish to be successful. So it just makes good sense to take that DACM and apply that to the process that you're trying to develop, and train your people on what they need to know. And then there's some extra stuff that I add to it that I found useful over the years that I include in those classes. But it's all based on the DACM, because the DACM really is the roadmap.
Right. I've done some work with RVDA in developing the DACMs here recently through Ohio State University SEAT. I think it's the Center for Employment Education, something to that effect. At any rate, it's interesting how that gets done and how important that is as a roadmap. And we use it to explain to other outside training sources what we train to, and if they're going to offer training, if they follow this curriculum, it really works out in pinpointing what they can use as far as continued education. And it's great to have someone like you with your experience and knowledge and organization through the military to be involved in this type of training. I think it's excellent.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Are you planning any more fixed ops training, maybe service writer advisor, part specialist, anything?
I did service writer class. I've been doing those for a number of years now, and I keep adding to that. And I teach the 7-step process in service writing. And it's actually the whole 7-step process in the whole service process. So if I teach to that, the service writers know all the steps, not that they're directly involved in all the steps, but they need to know them just to be able to function as a service writer.
Right.
But that class we did in the fall. We did one last year in January. We did one for service writers. And then I also did service management class, which is really designed for the service manager to be able to manage and process through the service department. Working on a parts process now. Got a couple of, I've got a dealer that's one of the members is going to assist, but that project's on hold probably till March or April. When training season slows down, I'll have a little more time. He'll have a little less time, but we'll work it out.
Yeah. So you said you did some service management and service writer training. Are those available through PRVCA, or is there somewhere that people can get access to that?
We'll probably provide that again in the fall next year.
Okay.
Unless there's enough demand out there, I would do another class if there's enough demand. But our members, it was member only before, up until this point, up till October sometime, when they decided to take the training to the general public or to the dealers outside of membership. So our members have seen the general man or the service manager and the service writer class twice now in the last 2 years. So unless there's enough demand out there from RVDA to do some more from the Learning Center, I'd be happy to do one. But it probably come to fruition until next fall.
Hopefully we can drum up a little business for you, because I'm hoping to get this out so our members can see this and we can talk about it, and that they can bring you guys up and get involved. I know we just recently we finished our service writer advisor online training course. And that was kind of a challenge, but it's really good. And I've been working on our parts specialist course. Your training isn't just restricted to Pennsylvania through PRVCA, though. I mean, anybody in the country can get it?
Anybody in the country can get it. We provide a lot of this training at no cost to our dealers, to our members. Non-members will pay a fee, and they're pretty much invited to any of the trainings that we offer, depending on what it is and who's providing it and how it's developed or put together. It'll depend on what the price will be for non-members. But for example, the only one we cannot and won't offer to non-members is technician RVTI level 1 and level 2.
Right. Yeah,
RVTI.
Yeah, they've taken care of that.
Yep.
So the dealers have been receptive to it. I mean, your dealers in Pennsylvania have been pretty receptive to this material, right?
Yeah, we generally get, well, it depends on what training we're doing. We did a sales training seminar that was a webinar early December. We had, I think it was like 10 or 12 dealerships in 2 4 1-hour, 1.5-hour classes. And we did RV electricity class for technicians. That was pretty much an all-day class. We had, I think it was like 38 students in that one. We're getting ready to do the warranty administration class next week, and we've got 35 people signed up for that.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I know you used to do, PRVCA always did a certain amount of service training through Northampton Community College. I don't know if that's anything anymore, but I like you said, you're phasing out your technician training. The
Northampton Community College stuff, that kind of all went to the wayside, basically because it's too difficult to get people to participate on site at a small location like that. It needs to be more focused somehow from the dealers and supported better from the dealers to create that type of thing. RVTI, I see is going to be successful because they got a lot of support out there from the manufacturers,
right,
helping that along. Well, when you're a small association, it's a little more difficult. So we partnered with RVTI, and we'll be offering the RVTI classes to our members only.
Okay.
So that's in the process and in the works right now.
So the internet's worked pretty well here. You know, when everybody talks about COVID-19 now. So I guess you'd have to say that the internet and web courses are probably, I mean, they're kind of like the only game in town right at this point. Have you had to make any other adjustments? I mean, if you're doing the training yourself, that's one thing, but if you have to work with other people to do it, have you done any adjustments to the training during this or your delivery?
Well, I think everybody's has made adjustments to delivery.
Right.
The content's there, but they've had to develop different ways to put out the content. The RV electricity course that we just did, the instructor is Mike Sokol, and he has cameras that just show everything that's happening,
yeah,
and makes it very interesting and very well done. Other classes are using a lot of PowerPoints. I use PowerPoints to keep on track.
right.
As an instructor, and I've been instructing and training for a lot of years. And I used to teach technicians at the RVTI course, the NRVTI over at Northampton Community College many years ago. The difference is, and the struggle for an instructor is, you don't get any feedback from your students. It's hard to get that feedback as you're training. Where are they going? Are they paying attention? Does somebody look confused and is afraid to ask a question? That's the hard part. And if you can overcome that and build enough rapport with your students to let them open up in the class, when you're doing a live online webinar, you're miles ahead. So I work real hard at doing that.
Are you using any sort of like testing or quizzes at the end to kind of get an idea of how much they're getting out of it?
I do put a quiz at the end, but it's usually a short 10, 15 question quiz, just something to verify that they paid attention. So each block will add a question to the quiz, and then that block, that question, they'll have to be paying attention to catch it. It's usually not something that's intuitively obvious.
So do you give them a certificate or anything when they're done, validation to say that they did this and you saw them or you know they did it?
Yeah, well, one, we take attendance at every class.
Okay.
And there's no real way of knowing that, they could turn on the computer and just sit out there and not turn the camera on.
Yeah.
But so that's the difficult part. So you gotta have a little trust in character when you're doing this. Plus the quiz, make sure I'm getting the information across. If somebody fails that quiz, I'm going to be reaching out and trying to get them up to speed. I mean, it's important that they get the most important thing here is that they get the training, that they understand it, that they learn something from it.
Yes.
Everything else is, if they fail the quiz and didn't understand the material, I'm going to go back and say, hey, you sat in this class. I want you to understand where you having the problems. If I have to reteach the whole class, I'm going to do it. Because
that's great. That's great, because it is good to have that reinforcement for them. And so that and once they go through it a couple of times, they know that your training is going to do that for them. I mean, that's important. That really is important. So what sort of advice would you give anyone, whether they're students or even RV dealerships, regarding who's considering training at the dealership? What kind of advice would you give them? What should they do?
Get involved in the training. One, I think the dealers themselves, the dealer principals and management level, need to take an active role in the class in terms of, you know, checking on their people, make sure they're getting what they need out of it, and make sure they're paying attention. Make sure that they don't have any questions. Encourage them to ask questions if they do.
Right.
Encourage them to follow through with the training. And then the students, as students, they really need to participate. And if there's a question or something they don't understand, they need to reach out to the instructor or reach out to me and say, hey, I'm lost here. I don't understand what you're talking about. Can we go over this thing? I didn't get it fully. You went too fast over this section, or we all understand this, move on, you know, whatever it takes, especially in a virtual scenario, in a virtual world. It's hard to get that as an instructor. You don't get the
right. Well, great. I really appreciate this, and I'm going to go through this, see what it looks like when we're done here, and then see how we're going to present this. But I really appreciate it, Greg. Greg DeWalt from PRVCA.